Hello there and welcome. I'm Warrior, and if you're new here, I really hope I'll earn your subscription today. Today it is Heroes of Might and Magic 3, the board game, and we're going to paint Fortress. We got 10 miniatures, one of them is the town, we got 2 heroes and 7 faction units. And one thing is special about Fortress, they have 4 large creatures. Since there's so many more big creatures, I'll have to spend a bit more paint on these, but that's not a problem. But we better get started. I'll start out painting everything black with my airbrush. I know this video has been on a long journey. I started 4 months ago. The intro was actually filmed in September 2025, so you can see it is a long journey. But here we are, painting all the miniatures black and following up with a grey highlight. The black was only sprayed from below, and this time I will use this light grey to spray from the top to give it a nice light effect. This is what is called a zenithal highlight. To put some more details into the highlights, I will dry brush all the miniatures with a matte white. I'm using the golden maple dry brushes, and if you're interested in getting a set like this with 3 dry brushes and 4 miniature brushes, I have links in the description below. The painting handle I'm using in this video is also from golden maple. And I really love this painting handle. It's made out of wood, which is very comfortable, and when you have big hands like me, you get a very good and firm grip. It will give you less strain in your hands during long painting sessions. There is an affiliate link in the description below, and use the promo code OLE to get 15% off. It's very important when you're making this highlight with a dry brush that you have almost no paint on the brush. I'm using my homemade dry palette, and you can just use a cloth or anything else. I'm actually going back to using a cloth. This was just an experiment, and I think a cloth will work better. But just remember, if you use too much paint on the dry brush, you will get a chalky look. In the outskirts of Arathia swamps, you will find the home of a people hardened by mud, mist and monsters. This is the town of Fortress that serve as the domain of Beastmasters and Witches. I'll start out using this voodoo shade as the base color. It's a wash directly on top of this zenithal highlight. To give it a green and mossy look, I will use this military shade wash in some of the recesses and around the windows. It also have a lot of plants growing around, and for the base color I will use this blighted green. This town has a lot of windows, and we need to put some lights into them. I will put a tiny drop of very thin white paint into every single window to make a good highlight and light effect. I will follow up with this inner light at very bright and pale yellow as the base coat on top of the white in each window. The technique is the same. I will thin it down so it will just run into every little recess in the windows. And while the paint in the windows dry, I will use this grey castle for the rocks and dirt around the town. I'll also use the same color as a highlight on all the edges and stones here on the building. Someone forgot to press the record button, but I used this Eternal Hunt as a highlight on all the green stuff around the town. And back to the windows. To make a more warm color around the edges of the windows, I will use this lava orange. And this grim dark shadow, I will use that for spot painting some shadows in all the crevices where I think it needs to be a bit darker. And now we got a town ready for the Fortress faction. From the swamps of Totalia emerge the gnolls Fierce, loyal, and relentless, the Gnoll Marauders strike faster and hit harder, turning every battlefield into their hunting grounds. And with this brigandine brown, I will make the base coat on all the skin and fur on this gnoll. Banshee brown as the base coat for all the leather parts on the armor. Some dusty skull for the little scarf that are covering his private parts. And the leather brown, yes, it won't be used for leather, but for his underpants or maybe just pants. The naming on the bottle is not always what it's meant for. This boot brown will be used as a mid-tone on his fur. Blanched berry, I will use this to give the armor a reddish leather look. And again, naming on the bottle is not always what it seems. Much better, well, would also be the mid-tone for his fur. Light battle dress, again, a name for a color that is not gonna be used for. Or actually, it could be a battle dress because this is for highlighting his dress, scarf. Camo brown, well, will it give him some camouflage? Or is it just another color for his fur? Basilisk red for highlighting the armor. And it is definitely not this color I'm going to use on the Basilisk later. Ivory white, a very nice off-white color. I'm going to use it to highlight the scarf around his waist. Sunburst ochre. I'll use this color to start building up the color layers around his face and the rest of his fur. And this strong tone, I'll use that all over his fur to give more depth to all the shadows. I'll use the strong tone on his scarf as well, but I will need to thin it down with some speed paint medium. I could have used a lighter tone wash, but to limit the amount of colors used on this model, I'll just thin it down to make it a bit brighter. Heavy metal metallic paint for his twin morning star. And now let's start painting the base. I'll use this Gravelord Grey, which is one of my favorite speed paints for base coloring bases where there's rocks and dirts. And after the wash is dry, the colors have been dulled down a bit, so I will go back to the Sunburst Ochre and re-highlight the fur. To get some more vibrancy into the fur, I will use this Flickering Flame. It's a very bright orange and I'm a bit afraid to use it, but you have to do some experiments sometimes. And I will take it even further with this Findish Yellow. And back to the Ivory White, and I will use this to give the final highlight on his face. Some Copper Red to make some highlights on his armor. And back to the Dusty Skull to paint the base. We need to put some highlights on those rocks. Highlighting the Morning Star, I'll use this Shining Silver and I will actually dry brush it on. And finally, I will give it a dark tone. And now this Gnoll Marauder is ready to enter the armies of Fortress. Lizardmen and Lizard Warriors are the only shooters of the Fortress faction. Recruited from the Lizard Den, these are the level 2 warriors. They wield a bow for ranged strikes and daggers when the fight gets too close. The darkness will be the perfect base coat for these Lizardmen. It is a very dark, deep blue tone and it's not black, so it won't be so harsh in its shadows. These Lizardmen are not wearing armor, but I'll use this fur brown for his clothing. Paratrooper Tan will be used for his leather, not armor, but more like belt and ropes. And this leather brown will be used for the pads that he has on his thighs. Maybe it is some sort of armor, but I might be wrong. Boot brown, but this is not for boots. This Lizardman doesn't wear boots, but is for his quiver. Pale sand for the little bones or tooths that are on his bow, his nails, and of course we also need to paint some eyes. Canvas, I'll use that for the ropes on the bow and the pattern on the quiver. And then some wash, the strong tone. I'll use that for all the leather, the bow, and his clothing. We also have some bones on the base, and why not use the palette bone? We also have a speed paint called Bony Matter, and I used that for the base, and I forgot to press record again. But I will also use it on a quiver, like a wash. Imperial Navy, this will be the second blue color I will use on top of his skin. And back to the pale sand, and this time I'll use it as a highlight on his chest and neck. And to get back to working on his skin, I'll use this royal blue and start making some tiny highlights. And this jasper skin is not for his blue skin, this is for the highlight on his clothing. And back to the leather brown. I'll use that as a highlight on top of the places where I painted leather brown and put down a wash. And then it will actually work as a highlight. Arctic gem, a very light blue for the final highlights on the skin. Angel green is for some of the stuff on the base, which I'm going to work on now. Midnight olive is a very dark, deep green olive color. And I'll use that because I need some variation in the green, and then I can highlight it with some brighter colors later. Like this emerald forest, which is a very vibrant green yellowish color, and I think it works perfect as a highlight for plants. Electric lime is very vibrant yellowish green, and I'll use that for the final highlight on the plants. And back to canvas, just to give the little rocks and pebblestones on the base some highlights. And back to the angel green, just to paint the last little feathers on the arrows, also called fletching. And this is all colors used for painting this Lizardman Warrior. And now he's ready to enter the armies of Fortress. This is the Serpent and Dragonfly of the Fortress. These level 3 hunters are recruited from the Serpent Fly hive. Every strike dispels enemy buffs, nobody's immune, and dragonflies go further, inflicting weakness with every hit they make on the enemy. As a base coat for the body, I'll use this burnt moss speed paint. And while the burnt moss is still wet, I'll use this warrior skin and try to make some blending in to the rest of the body. Blanched berry, one of my favorite deep red colors. I'll use this for the base coat of the eyes and on the wings. Fairy vermilion is one of the brightest and most vibrant red colors I have from the army painter. And I'll use that on the eyes to make them a bit more bright. Pale sand, I'll use this for the nasty fangs. This pale sand, yeah, it could have been a white or any bright color, but I want to use another layer of speed paint on its hands, so I'll just slap it on and repaint it speed paint. Raging Sea. I want to introduce some very vibrant colors on the bases on all these miniatures, and this will be the perfect color for the water effect. Shamrock green is also a very vibrant green color from the speed paints, and I'll use that on the water lilies. The name of this charming something I can't pronounce, I'll use that for the cells and the edges of the wings on this dragonfly. Evergreen fog, I'll use this as a shadow effect on the inside in each cell on the wings. The camel brown, I'll use this to make some of the edges on the front side of the body on this dragonfly. And continue with this burning ore to make some highlights. Back to the pale sand, I'll use this on the tail on these tooth or spikes it has. Moonbeam yellow, this will be for the little yellow dot in each of its eyes. Space dust, this will be the edge highlight on the wings. Magenta toned wash, and now I'll try something very different. I will use this on the wings to give it a glow of this magenta effect. There's a lot of water lily flowers, and I'll just make a bit of highlight on these with this pale sand. And finish it off with this purple tone with a tiny drop in each lily flower. And this is pretty much it. This dragonfly is ready to enter the armies of Fortress faction, deal some damage and put some weaknesses into the enemy. Basilisks and Greater Basilisk, the level 4 creature of the Fortress faction. I'll use this brownish decay as the base coat on the full body on this Basilisk. Guardian Green. I'll use this almost like a dry brush and paint all the scales on this Basilisk. Terrestrial Titan, a very dark, deep purple color. And this will be for the inside of the flippers or frill. I don't know what it's actually called. Flickering Flame. This is a perfect color for its eyes. Some bony spikes for its very sharp teeth. And I will soak the whole body in this voodoo shade. And for the base, this Raging Sea is the perfect water effect to get some vibrancy. Algae Green is the perfect color that will give it a swamp-like look on this little island the Basilisk is standing on. Maggot Skin for the moss-like texture all over the base. And some Gravelord Grey for all the rocks. This is one of my favorite colors for basing when making rocks and dirt and stuff like that. Gilly Dew is a very vibrant green color, and it will be perfect for the vegetation close to the water. Bony Matter, since we have a skull next to the shore. Tourmaline Skin for that chopped off head that is next to the skull. Then we have some gunmetal. I'll use that for the helmet that is still on that chopped off head. We also have this effect paint, Dry Blood. I'll use that on the chopped off head, since it was recently chopped off by this Basilisk, or maybe bitten off. Deep Grey, the rocks and pebblestone will be the brushstroke of this. The paint is now dry, and I'll use this Grimdark Shadow and thin it down with some speed paint medium, just to give some more shadows on this chopped off head. Time to build up some highlights, and let's start out with the Templegate Teal, to give those spikes and horns some more vibrancy. And some Cultist Purple for those flippers or ears or whatever they're called. If anyone knows, please tell me in the comments. I want even more vibrancy into those spikes and horns, so I'll use this Aqua Alchemy. I was thinking about using some fluorescent colors here, but no, I don't think so this time. More vibrancy in the purple tones, Hex Violet, and you don't need much, you just have to tap the edges with this color. And the final highlight color, the Marine Mist for those horns and spikes. And I'm only just touching the edges using the side of the bristles. And I will do the same thing with this Gorgon Lavender, just touching the edges of the highest point inside those purple areas. Bony Spikes, this is for the claws. I know they're black in the game, but I think it would look nicer here on this miniature if they were a bit bright bony color. And I might as well use it for the teeth as a highlight. And finally, a tiny dot of this into its eye to make it more shiny. And this is the color used for this Greater Basilisk, and here he is. What a nasty looking beast. Now he's ready to enter the armies of Fortress. This is a Gorgon, Fortress Ironhide beast. Their acidic breath melts foes, and the mighty Gorgons strike with a deadly stare that can kill you outright. Pallid Bone. I will start out using this paint for its horns and the skulls on the base. And Brownish Decay as a base color for its body, or actually the upper front body. Turnbull Turquoise. I'll use that for its chest and its belly, and some grim black for its hooves. And the raging sea as I used on the other bases for the water effect. And I must say, this base is amongst my top 3 of the most beautiful bases in this whole game of Heroes of Might and Magic 3, the board game. Camo Cloak will be some of the darker green tones on this base. We also need some more vibrancy, and the Jelly Dew is perfect for that. I'll use it on the leaves on all these water lilies. And back to the body of the beast. Poppy red for the rest of the body, and I will try to blend it in with this brownish decay. So I will get a very nice transition between this brown and red color. But I don't think the brownish decay was good, so I will mix in some desolate brown. And it also needs to be more green, so I'll pick up the Camo Cloak again. And now this is actually turning a bit too dark, but I will make some better highlights later. Highlord Blue was actually the base color for the blue tint on all the castle factions that I painted previously. And I'll use that for that castle faction shield that is on the ground here under the beast. And I'll use this Gravelord Grey on all the rocks. The front of the beast is a bit too dark and the back is a bit too bright, so I'll try to tone it down with this dark red tone. First acrylic color, Tundra Taupe, is a green olive color, and I'll use that to start highlighting the front body of this beast. And the Bleached Berry will be the base highlight midtone for the backside of the body. Night Sky is a grayish blue color, and I'll use that for the chest and belly as the base highlight. Stepping up the highlights, I will continue with this Barren Blue. And for the eyes, Glowing Inferno. I could have used the Flickering Flame, but I think this color is a bit closer to what the original game has as a color. Basilisk Red, and still it's not a basilisk, but the color is perfect for starting to build up some highlight on the red zones in the back of the body. Paratrooper Tan will be a highlight for the front parts of the body. Plate Mail Metal. Yeah, we have a shield from the castle faction on the ground, and we need some metallic paint. And this was actually one of the hardest parts to film, because either it was for the camera or my eyes, and I prioritized my eyes so I could actually see where I was painting. Highlights for the horns will be this skeleton bone. And I'm using the side of the bristles again, because it's a lot easier to be precise in making these highlights. I also decided to use it as a highlight on the front parts of the body. I think I overdid it with the highlights, so I decided to tone it down and use this Bony Matter speed paint almost like a wash. Dark red tone, I will just put a tiny drop of this into the flowers of the water lilies. And now this mighty Gorgon is done. It is now ready to be tamed and enter the armies of Fortress. Wyverns, Fortress's fierce level 6 beasts, born in the Wyvern nest and found in the Dragonfly hives. Their stinging tails strike fast, and Wyvern Monarchs can poison foes for 3 brutal rounds unless cured. I'll start out with this burnt moss as the base coat for most of this beast. And for the wings, I'll start with this aged hide. And when these creatures are primed with a cenotaph highlight, these speed paints will give me a very good way to see all the shadows and where to put the highlights later. And the Raging Sea, also a speed paint. I think this turned out perfectly using this as water effect in this swampy look. Gravelord Grey for all the rocks on this base. Strap Grey or any kind of grey to fix the mistakes where I accidentally put some Raging Sea speed paint on the rocks. Howling Sand will be the base coat for the ground. The Shamrock Green, I really love this color because it's so vibrant and it is perfect for the look I want on these plants on the base. British Camo Green from the historical paint sets is a perfect green color to dry brush all over this Wyvern. And this is to build up this green base tone. And some wasteland clay for the chest. I'm using an ordinary brush, but I work with it like it was a dry brush and gently sweep on top of all the high points on this chest, and moving up the neck and all the way up to the head. Ruddy umber. I'll use this color on top of its head and almost dry brush it or highlight it with this color. And it should all end up in a transition from this red to green to the yellow all the way down through the body. Camo brown, and I will almost call it a very dark orange. I should have used this color from the start and skipped this ruddy umber, because I think this color suits the beast more. And a good thing to know is if you're not satisfied with the color, you can always paint over it. You don't have to strip the old color off unless you're getting too many layers and the details are gone. And blending red, green and yellow together, I've never done that before. I thinned down some of the midnight olive and I also took some of the wasteland clay and tried to make a wet blend. And I think it worked out quite well, so I will try it again with this terrestrial titan and the camo brown, just on the wings this time. Thunderous blue. I used this to make some transition from the purple to the blue area on the top of the wings. Figgy pink. I will use this color to make a pinkish tint on these spikes and follow up with some speed paint medium mixed with the pallid bone. Some strong tone, and I will only use that on the fingers on the wings. And this is to make the details more visible and you can actually see the bone structure in the wings. Glowing Inferno. I will use this as a base color inside the eye. It is going to be red, and I'm going to use this fairy vermilion to make a tiny red dot in its eye. The plants need some highlight, and I will use this electric lime, and this will add to the vibrancy of these plants. And that was the final touch. Now this Wyvern Monarch is ready to enter the armies of Fortress. From the depths of the Hydra pond rise the Hydras and Chaos Hydras, multi-headed beasts of Fortress. Their savage bites strike every foe around them, so fierce that no enemy can strike back. And this model will need more colors on a single model that I have ever used. Let's start out with the camel cloak as the base color of the main body. And one of the heads will get the same color. On the next head, brownish decay. Turnbull turquoise for the third head. And this is a very nice and dark turquoise color, and it will be perfect for this head. Dusk red. And this color is for the fourth head. I'm going to make this orange, so this very dark red color is very good for the base color. Burnt moss. This is for the last of the heads. Raging Sea. This is the same color I have used on all the bases where there is water. There's also a splash here on the front, so it's going to be a challenge how I will work this out. I might have to paint it over a couple of times. I'll use this dark wood speed paint on this log that it looks like this Hydra is just jumping down and makes the splash. So we need some wood color on that. And some forest sprite on all the low vegetations here on the base. And the graveyard gray for all the rest, the rocks and the dirt. And now to the acrylic paints. Ivory white for all the teeth. With speed paints you always have the risk of overpainting something you don't want, but you can always fix it with some acrylic paints, some bright colors, and you can use speed paints again, or you can just start highlighting with other colors. Fairy vermilion. I think this is a brilliant color for their tongues. Heavy metal. Yeah, there is actually some metal on these beasts. They have some shackles and change. Terrestrial Titan. A perfect color for the chest, and it will make the base for all the shadow areas. Plain Sparring. Unfortunately, I had some overpainting on the red head, so I can fix it with this color. Dark blue tone. To make more transitions into the purple and mix it in with the existing color of each head, I'll use this wash. Bony Matter Speed Paint. I'll use this for all the claws and horns on these beasts. Night Sky. This will be the midtone for the neck and the chest of this nasty beast. Basilisk Red will be the midtone for the red head. Abyssal Blue will be the midtone for the bluish turquoise head. And Sunburst Ochre for the midtone on the yellow head. British Camo Green. This will be the midtone on the green head. Dark Drab is a very olive greenish dark color, and this will be the midtone for the darkest of the green heads. And then we have the Light Drab. This will be the first highlight color of the green body, but I will make another highlight color later. Light Feltgrau will be the highlight color for the grayish green head. Alpha Blue. I'll use this on the neck and chest as the midtone for this Chaos Hydra. Demigod Flames will be the first highlight color on the yellow head. Phalanx Blue, a very vibrant turquoise bluish color. I'll use that on the blue head. Molten Lava, a very bright and vibrant orange color, and this will be the first highlight on the orange-red head. Now for some edge highlighting on the chest with this Ogle Blue. Frost Blue. I'll use this as the final edge highlight on the bluish-green head. Warped Yellow. This will be the final edge highlight color on the yellow head. And back to do something about the water on this base. I need to make a splash effect and build up some foam on this. Ogre Blue will be a mid-tone, and I'll use a bit less of this, and then I will finalize it with some white. Dark Olive. I'll use this to make some touch-up on the base where I did some overpainting. Electric Lime will be the highlight of all the green plants on the bottom of this base. And then I will use it on the green head as the final edge highlight. Inner Light. I will use this color as a highlight on the red head. And why a yellow? Well, I think this will just look cool, and it will make this head look a bit more orange. And I want the chain to look a bit more rusty, so I'll use this Grim Rust on the chain and the shadows. So many colors. I don't think I have ever used so many colors on a single miniature before. And I think this Chaos Hydra just turned out so good. It is one of my best paint jobs for a long time. And now it is ready to enter the armies of Fortress. We also need some heroes. Fortress faction is primary might, but they also have some magic. Might is represented by the Beastmaster Wasteland and Brawn, and we also have Tazar. And the magic is Adrienne, who is a witch. She is specialized in fire magic. Unfortunately, I lost the file of the presentation of the miniatures, but I started out painting the horses with some hardened leather to give them a beige color like there are in the PC game. And the two heroes are a might and a magic hero. The might hero is represented by a Gnoll Marauder, and the magic hero is a Lizard Rider. I will paint the two miniatures simultaneously since they're sharing a lot of colors, especially on the horses. And the Gnoll will be painted almost like the Gnoll I painted earlier, and the same thing goes for the Lizard Rider. I had a lot of technical issues while painting these miniatures, and it was not the miniatures or the paint, it was my cameras. I have two continuously running cameras. One is recording directly on an SD card and the other is recording through OBS directly to my hard drive. And this camera that is recording directly to my hard drive, it was my video capture card that was cutting out and losing its signal. And the other camera that is just recording so I have backup footage, the SD card was unreadable when I was trying to extract the files. And I was almost done painting these miniatures when I suddenly found out that the files were corrupted and the SD card couldn't read them. I got all the problems fixed. I got a new SD card, and what you see now is actually my backup camera footage from the only file that I actually recovered from it. But in this footage, I'm actually trying to paint some eyes on this Gnoll Marauder, and I'm using the ivory white. And for the Gnoll's mid-tone skin color, it will be the leather brown. And to highlight the banner, I will use this British camo green. Light drab for the final edge highlight on the banner. Emperor Gold is a bronze gold color, and I'll use it on the buttons on these decoration here on the harnesses on the horse. And this is actually the only colors used on both heroes. And it is the same basic colors that I have used on all the miniatures in this faction. And here they are. Now they're ready to lead the armies of Fortress. And before I paint the rims on all the miniatures, I noticed something on the town castle. I did a mistake. Something I thought were plants is actually fire. So we have to repaint this. I started to paint it over with some matte white, just to cover up all this green color. And I'll only use 4 colors to make these flames. I'll start with the ice yellow as the brightest. Next color for the flames will be the inner light, and this will be the mid-tone. Next up will be lava orange. As you can see, I'm starting with the bright colors and building up to dark. So it's the opposite way when you're painting ordinary shadows and highlights. This will give a very good flame effect. Resplendent red will be the final color for these flames. Webbing green from the historical paint sets is the perfect color match, as you can see here, to paint these rims on the bases. I'm finally done painting these Heroes of Might and Magic, the board game Fortress miniatures, and I'm very excited about it. I'm also very proud of the results. It's been a long journey. It took me over 4 months to get here. It's been painting on and off, doing other projects, then getting sick, doing other projects and getting sick again. When I started painting all these miniatures, I didn't own the game myself. I actually just wanted to paint them because I thought they were very cool, and I'm a huge fan of the PC game. And my very good friend Christian, he bought the full box, and we have an unboxing video of it up here. I started painting his miniatures, and then he also got hooked on painting miniatures, so I couldn't paint all of them. I ordered the game myself, and it took a very long time for them to arrive here. Then I had to reach out on Facebook, and it didn't take long before a very nice guy called Danny that lives close by, he said that I could paint his miniatures. And this is the final miniatures of his that I have painted here. And there is still 3 factions that I need to paint, and they are still in order, but they haven't arrived here yet. And now we're back in the same situation again, because now Danny got hooked on painting miniatures, and he already got his expansion. I'm still waiting for mine. So we will see what happens in the future. But if you want to see the miniatures and the full expansion, I can highly recommend tabletopgaming. It's a Danish channel, and they do some awesome reviews of board games. And you can catch the link down here below, because they do great content. This is it for now, and if you already haven't done it, please hit that subscribe button up here. Leave a comment down below and give me a thumbs up. Share it with people that you think could be interested in watching a video like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.